You are listening and watching Bloomberg Businessweek on this Thursday. A little chilly out here.
Unseasonably cool and wet in this part of the country.
He is such the diplomat.
Okay, well look, I'm a
This
Californian.
team.
You can never complain about rain if you're a Californian. This state is going through a severe drought right
That's
now.
true.
I mean, it has been for as long as I can remember. So any rain is welcome.
Silver
We're okay
lining
with
in
it.
the clouds.
Silver lining,
Even the
that
rain
is
clouds.
true.
All right, right now we have a couple of members of the Stanford Graduate School of Business team. We have Senior Associate Dean Paul Oyer. He oversees the MBA program. He's professor of economics. He's also author of a new book, An Economist Goes to the Game. We'll talk about that in a moment. And Professor Kate Casey, Associate Professor of Political Economy. She worked for the World Bank. She worked for the government of Sierra Leone. Focuses, among other areas, of political accountability so much. But we want to talk to them because I think it has to do with the co-teaching model that often happens at Stanford. So we welcome them. First of all, thank you for having us on your campus. And it's great to kind of talk with the different constituents, if you will, of the Stanford community, including yourselves. Paul, let me ask you, first of all, you do oversee the MBA program.
I do.
What's top of mind when you think about what you want to make sure that the student body and the student population is getting here at Stanford?
Yeah, I think the students these days have so many demands on their time, and getting them to really take the 2 years that they're here and immerse themselves in the academic and the other things that the program has to offer, and not, and really come here with a goal. I think that's a key to being successful. And then having great professors like Kate and so forth makes it easy for them to focus on academics a lot of the time, but there's just so many things you can do in 2 years at Stanford.
Well, talk about that a little bit, because I remember when I did go to business school a few years ago, and in our introduction, the dean, I remember saying, think about business school having 3 stools. One is academics, one is recruiting, and one is social. So whenever I was studying for a test, I'd always think to myself, am I doing more than 33% of the academics right now? Should I be out having beers with my classmates? How do you see that?
So first of all, I would agree that those are the 3 legs of the stool. That doesn't mean they have to be equal legs. I like to remind people we're graduate school at Stanford University, which is the best research university in the world. Some of your listeners may disagree, but we're right up there no matter what.
Among the.
Well, #1 according to the Bloomberg Businessweek.
Well, in business schools, for sure. So, and thank you for that, by the way. We appreciate it. Yeah, absolutely. There's the people who come here have already excelled in academics as undergrads, and often with prior advanced degrees. So academics is very important. We would not be a part of Stanford University if we weren't providing that. Yes, those other things are really important. They're more important to some people than to others, and that's our job as faculty, is to keep people focused on the academics and remind them that that's what they're here for, and that's going to create value for them in their careers later on.
So I just want to know, on that 3-pronged stool, beer?
No, I over-index on academics.
That
Because
doesn't surprise me.
I mean, I went kind of late. It was, I had a lot of catching up to do.
All right, I just wanted to check. All right, so Kate, let's bring you in on this, because the political economy is so important. And I think about our world at large, whether, war in Ukraine, Russia, supply chains, pushback against globalization. There's so much going on, the money influence in politics, which ultimately impacts the economy. What is it that you hope students who come here to get an MBA at Stanford, what they walk away with and what they think about when it comes to political economy?
Yeah, I mean, that's a brilliant question. So I think what's most important to think about is governments intervene in markets all the time, everywhere. There's not a country in the world that doesn't have, different pieces of legislation, important regulatory changes, high-profile court cases that shapes the market environment, right? So you want to be able to understand how government works so you can make some reasonable forecasts about how policy might change, because those interventions, they create winners and losers, right? They impose direct costs, but they create opportunities. So the idea is to be able to anticipate policy and then reformulate your strategy in a proactive way.
If I can follow, in terms of the money in politics, how does that skew and make it so that maybe when it comes to the U.S. economy or the global economy, that we either get more out of it or we don't get as much as we could maybe get out of it if there wasn't so much money in politics?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important to keep in mind that the U.S. is one system, right? So one advantage of, allowing lobbying is that it's above board, it's on the table, you can regulate it and you can be transparent on it. But there's other models, like the UK has much less money in politics and more like state funding of campaigns and more of a level playing field. So I think it's important to look around and appreciate how different markets have different governance institutions.
Professor Casey, I'm wondering, from the students that you interact with, are you seeing a good portion of them go and work for governments, go into public service like you did earlier in your career? The reason I ask is because business school is expensive.
Yep.
And you need to cover those costs. And a lot of
Right.
people do come to business school with the idea that they will leave earning in the top income bracket. How
Right.
do you reconcile
Yeah.
those things?
Yeah, so I think those are important trade-offs, and obviously students have to find their own passion and their own pathway. One of the things that I've always found important, because I've worked for the World Bank and the government before, is that the skills that you get in an MBA program are incredibly valuable in running large public organizations. So we don't have a lot of students that go into government, but the ones that do, I think, are incredibly well equipped, to run efficient, impactful organizations.
And
Or
one
then
thing
you
I-
have one that becomes the Prime Minister of the UK.
Exactly.
Or
One of
even
our-
the
yeah.
flip side of that is you work for the government for a while,
Yes.
and then you go
Sure.
and you work for, in the private sector, and you
Yep.
get paid handsomely for that.
Dean Oyer, come on in, because I want you to talk about the co-teaching model that happens here at Stanford. Tell us about it and how it helps students.
Right, so the foundation on which the academic side of the MBA program is built is we have faculty that are at the cutting edge. They're writing papers that are really leading their research fields. And we ask them to be very practical in their teaching. And sometimes a way to take that practicality to the next level is to actually find somebody from industry or some sort of practitioner to come in and co-teach with them. So I'll give you a couple of examples. There's a finance professor named Ilya Strebulayov who co-teaches two different classes, one on venture capital and one on private equity. He's teaching those with partners in those types of firms. Incredibly valuable courses. The students, the complementarities between the practitioner and the professor, where, Professor Strebulayov, Ilya will say, here's some of what the research shows on this and that, and then the partner will come in and say, well, okay, but let me add a little context on how it works in the real world. And then he'll say something about, we don't quite understand why that is. And then the professor will be like, well, let me give you a framework let me put that in the context of the so-and-so model that will help put a framework around that and give you some ideas. So I once co-taught a class that was with a guy who had been a partner at McKinsey. And that was a class about inequality, so it was a little more about public policy issues. And I'm a labor economist. I would bring in a lot of what the research said, and he would be like, he was the top economic advisor to.
You'll be like Paul in reality.
Yeah. And he was the top economic advisor to Governor Newsom, and he would be like, okay, here's how we get these things done. Here's how we take that and get it done.
Is it 50-50 in scenarios like that? Are they in every classroom with you?
So the way things, the beauty of Stanford and like the blessing and the curse of Stanford is our courses are just really at the discretion of the professor. And so some of the team teaching will be like, somebody will do 80% of the talking or really drive the discussion. Others will be 50-50, sometimes more the practitioner, sometimes more the lecturer. Some of our classes are case-based. Many of our classes are more experiential. Some will be even a little more traditional lecture, not very many of those anymore. So it really varies.
It's interesting too, Kate, you talked about political economy, political economics, and you're right, there's different models. When I was asking about money in politics, there's different models, US versus the UK. Yeah. There's also, we talk about the world, and so often we're talking about the developed world. You do a lot of work in the developing world, where great ideas come from, but there's also tension. So tell us about how the importance of bringing the emerging economy into your teachings.
Yeah, so we try to have a very global perspective in the course. So, just to give you some examples, we look at political risk and oil and gas in Argentina. We looked at mobile money and how do you fit in with the central bank regulators in Nigeria. We looked at, political risk around auto manufacturing in India, right? And then we look at U.S. healthcare reform. And we talked about, money in politics. That was a huge part of it. So we try to. I think the message is sort of twofold. One is a little bit of a sales pitch to look beyond the wealthiest countries for opportunities, if that's something you're interested in. And And to recognize that if you think about the role of government, as you kind of move away from the wealthiest countries, the ability of the state to intervene in markets and really shape market opportunities, I think gets more amplified and even more important. So trying to be savvy, trying to understand who these regulators are, who's the politician, like why do they put themselves forward? What are they trying to achieve? What are their constraints? How does the firm fit in with that agenda or conflict with it?
We certainly spend a lot of time, Kate, talking about the challenges that this country faces when it comes to volatility in the markets, when we see high prices. We've also spent a lot of time in recent months talking about the challenges emerging economies face, specifically with a strengthening dollar and how they could be between a rock and a hard place if they have dollar-denominated debt. I'm wondering, in this kind of bizarre world that we're living in right now, to what extent you're worried about emerging economies being left behind, even more so than they have been historically, as a result of what's playing out in the global financial system.
I think that's a great point, right? I mean, and it's incredibly challenging, and I think it speaks to like this is a truly globalized world now, and what happens in the U.S. and what happens in Europe affects every other country, right? And I think when you think about your ability to raise capital in one environment and bring it to bear in another, all of these things become extremely complicated.
Well, you know, when you think about what's really wonderful is, in reading about Stanford and just the coverage that we've done over the years, you know, the experiences that students have, the experiential learning, that is such a big part of what you folks do. And I think about the real life events just this year, the crypto market. You know, Dean Oyer, how do you guys incorporate that in? What comes up in conversations that ultimately may help you guys develop different courses you want to, you know, teach or different programs that you want to have here at Stanford?
Yeah, that's a great question. We're the curriculum is a living thing. It's moving very quickly. And that's where the practitioners and the lecturers can be very helpful, because they can jump in and add topics in a way that the faculty, the academic research market is a little slower, shall we say, to develop. And so the topic...
Especially with some of the crypto, that if you think just in the last 6 to 12 months, what has happened.
Exactly. And you know, now having said that, our finance professors, of course, are adjusting and talking about crypto in the relevant contexts in their classes. So we do stay on top of that, and students ask for, oh, we want to learn about crypto, and we try to add courses or content around that. You know, the business school has to be a vibrant place, because we want to be very rigorous and academic, but we have to be relevant. We're trying to train people to go out and manage actual organizations, and they have to learn things in the context in which that's going to be done.
Metaverse? You can't laugh. You're in Silicon Valley. Can you laugh at the metaverse?
I think you can. I think it's allowable. We'll allow it.
We'll pass on that.
Dean, you're sitting on your book right now.
Oh, my God.
There it is.
How did that happen?
Goes to the
Oh
game.
my goodness.
How to throw away $580 million and other surprising insights from the economics of sports. We have it there on the cover if you're watching us on the screen, on Quick Take, or at Bloomberg.com or on YouTube. How do you throw away $580 million?
Well, the title comes from the NBA strike, which was about 10 years ago now. And I'm a labor economist. There's one chapter that's all about why athletes get paid so much and why some have long-term contracts and some don't. And then there's a contract about collective bargaining agreements, and that's the example
that's the labor
that generates
economist in you.
the 580. That's the labor economist in me. The book is about sports more generally, so like maybe one of my favorite parts is about the story of how you should think about whether or not to invest in your child's sporting career, or why. Maybe my favorite thing, to be honest, is this story about why Korean women are so great at golf, which when you think about it there's no good reason for that, but it's, at least to me, it's all economics. And you know, I turn on SportsCenter and I see economics. I'm a little weird that way.
Listen, we've done you know, broadcasts from just before the Super Bowl. You know, we call it power players, because athletes have become so influential, the amount of money in sports, and now that gaming and gambling is getting much more involved. Just got about 40 seconds or so left. Final thoughts from you in terms of when you think about the importance of your students.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like a gift to be able to interact with them, and they're here. And what I love about them is they're very passionate and they're very ambitious, and they go off in all kinds of different directions, and it's wonderful to see them flourish when they leave.
Dean Oyer, just about 20 seconds. What do you hope when a student comes here and gets an education? What do you hope they walk away with? One thing, very important. I know
I
this
hope
laughs.
they come up. I hope they come up with a broader view of what they can do to influence their organization and influence beyond their organization.
All right, we're going to leave it on that note. You guys, thank you so much. Really
Thank you.
enjoyed this.
Thank
Good luck
you.
with the book.
Thanks a lot.
Senior Associate Dean Paul Oyer of Stanford, of course, and Professor Kate Casey, Associate Professor of Political Economy